Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavel. It was supposed to be a landslide. We were told a blue wave. Alas, it didn't happen that way. Oh, the polls were again wildly wrong. Trump may still lose this vote, but can the claim Trump is a fluke or an aberration stand? And what to expect next? To crosstalk the election and more, I'm joined by my guest, Lionel in New York. He is a legal and media analyst. In Las Vegas, we have Fiorella Isabel. She is an independent journalist and co-host of the Convo Couch. And in Budapest, we cross to George Samueli. He is an author and a YouTuber at The Gaggle. All right, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I always appreciate it. Okay, let's get started. Let's go to our guest in Las Vegas here. You know, everybody's talking about the legitimacy of this counting of the ballot here. And I think if a lot of us, and I'm looking at our panel here, we all kind of expected this to happen. This is an intentional disaster. But I don't see any really good way out because there isn't a way for any kind of compromise. And I think it's going to be a very alienating experience. I'd like to point out to our viewers here that as of now, Donald Trump got 2 million more votes than Hillary Clinton did in 2016. Donald Trump is not a fluke. He's not an aberration. And the people that like him are neither either. So what's your assessment as we're in this very fluid situation?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like America is really looking like a disaster to the rest of the world. And you can tell me by being an outsider, the way the mainstream media, big tech, and the corporatocracy completely aligned in order to coddle Joe Biden and to really just hate on Donald Trump, to literally, in my opinion, rig this election in Joe Biden's favor, selecting somebody like Joe Biden, who was in 5th place during the primary, selecting somebody like Kamala Harris, who was one of the people who literally had to leave the primary because she was so unpopular in California, in her very own state, to now bringing them this far up. And then I was watching the results come in the day of. It was like 2 a.m. And all of a sudden we see 100,000 ballots directly go to Joe Biden in Wisconsin, where Donald Trump was leading with a hefty margin. Similar things happened in Michigan, and the AP refused to call so many states where Donald Trump was favored. Florida being one of them in particular, where he was 98% reporting, they refused to call it. Texas, the same thing. You can't tell me that that's not media manipulation. And then you can't tell me that all of a sudden 100,000 ballots are going to go directly to Joe Biden and not a single one is going to go to Donald Trump. We have to be honest here. And I consider myself a leftist on the spectrum. I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary. And I'm over here getting called a right-winger for simply questioning the process of this election. So what I am seeing here is something that has been a long time coming in this country, where we are seeing the polarized two-party system and people just going at each other with no substance. People are hurting in this country economically. And this whole debacle has been nothing but political theater for the two-party system that has failed the American people.
It's not it's political theater, but it's not very funny because there's going to be consequences. Lionel, you have a legal mind here. Tell us in the fewest number of words you can, because it's complicated here. Is this the way these states count in the vote? Is it within legal bounds right now? Because we know that the Trump campaign is pursuing lawsuits here. Where are they going to go, Lionel?
Well, first, what we just heard just now was one of the most perfect distillations from an avowed leftist that I've ever heard. I'm going to tattoo it on my forehead in a microchip. It was perfection. Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen this election stolen fair and square, if you can believe this. And when people ask me, are you suggesting that Joe Biden will be the next president? I say, no, it'll be Kamala Harris. He will serve less than William Henry Harrison, who served for 31 days. To answer your question, legally, Elections are run by the states. They have their rules. States' rights, get back. States' rights, 10th Amendment, get back. It's up to them. When you have a democratic state, when you have democratically elected judges, when you have those who say, well, this might be irregular, but is this a fundamental constitutional wrong? Not necessarily. SCOTUS, the Supreme Court from last time, is saying, don't you even think about it. Nino Scalia was still feeling the ravages of Bush against Gore. So what you're seeing right now is a group of people who are going to be saying, say what you want, but states, this is up to you. Let me say one thing quickly. If I told you that I was going to rig an election by stopping the count, now think about this. It's like you saying timeout in a boxing match. There's no such thing as timeout. Timeout. How are we doing? Need 100,000 more. Got it. Anybody who has a scintilla of an organized crime, I have friends of mine allegedly involved in certain organizations who applaud the hubris and the audacity. So to answer your question, I'm sorry, rather
but okay, Lionel, I'm not disputing the fact that these people are going to pull it off, but George, there are consequences for this, okay? Half the country is being disenfranchised, according to what we've heard already on this program. That doesn't bode well for the future, George, because how many people are going to say, not my president? Is that a new trend in American politics? If it is a trend, it's not sustainable. George.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, if we look at this election, the Democrats did extremely poorly. They lost seats in the House. They failed to capture the Senate. But lo and behold, they win the presidency with the weakest candidate for president in recent history. There's never been anyone as weak as Joe Biden. We remember the night of the election, Trump was winning comfortably. He had taken Florida. He was well ahead in all of the key industrial Midwestern states. Suddenly, the vote count stopped. Then when it resumes, lo and behold, as Fiorella said, they just discover batches of votes. And clearly, what's happening in these states, these three states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, is something that is atypical. So if you find that in Detroit or in Milwaukee, there's suddenly an amazing heaviness of voting, which we don't see in Dallas or Houston or Cleveland or any other major city, then that is inherently suspicious. And when you discover 138,000 votes, every single one of them for Biden, that is suspicious. So, of course, if the courts, and I think Lionel is right, I think the courts will be reluctant to get involved. We've already seen in the case of Pennsylvania, the Roberts Court didn't want to get involved. And so chances are that the decision will go against Trump. Then Trump supporters will say this election was stolen from us, stolen fair and square. And just as much as the presidency of Donald Trump was stolen from him because he had to spend all his time fighting off the ridiculous Russiagate hoax, fighting off a ridiculous impeachment. And what happens then, when an election is stolen, they tend to get violent.
Let's go back.
It's happened in every other country, and America's no different.
I'm calling it the Belarus model. That's what's happening here. Let's go back to Las Vegas. One of the things that the media has been conditioning the public for 4 years is that Donald Trump is an aberration. He's a fluke, a freak of nature, a freak of political nature here. But the election result says something completely different, that this is a force of political nature here. And actually, it was a good night for the GOP. Where was the blue wave that we were told about? Where were the double-digit wins we were told about? Look at a number of I think it was 5 Senate seats that were up for grabs. Republicans handily re-won their seats here. I mean, we're being gaslit here. And it's going to have consequences because people are going to say, no, the GOP actually is expanding and it's becoming much more diverse. And juxtapose it to, we're just going to take it because we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump gained more votes from the Latino population than the last two Republican candidates. This isn't a fluke. This is the fact that the Democratic Party is so weak. They're looked as hypocrites. I mean, I'm a person of Latino heritage, and half of my family members voted for Donald Trump. The other half voted for Joe Biden. We're not a monolith. And I think a lot of people in the Democratic Party, with this, the same way they did this to the Black population, have been condescending and expecting people to vote a certain way without giving them any reason to vote for them. The immigration issue wasn't really a strong point of Joe Biden. In 2007, he wanted to build a fence, a fence really big and wide. And he also was part of the administration that had the deporter in chief. They build the cages that Donald Trump is now supposedly exploiting. So what I am saying, even from a perspective of a Latino, the Democrats look like hypocrites, and they just did not do enough to actually offer policies. And a lot of these people, like we said, are hurting. And he expanded his base. I mean, I was in Beverly Hills covering these rallies that were for Donald Trump, and I have never seen more people of color go to Donald Trump. I saw a lot of Black Americans and Mexicans for Trump. It was insane to me, but I kept saying Donald Trump is going to increase his base with a lot of minorities. And that is something that the Democratic Party nor the mainstream media want to talk about, because it defeats their narrative that Donald Trump is, of course, this sexist, racist, homophobic president, but that's all they pin on him. But they completely have failed to actually provide any solutions. And it shows in the fact that the Senate and Congress in general have gone red. And the polls, again, the polls that mainstream media and all of these pundits wanted people to trust were completely off. And who could have predicted that? It's not like we were here 4 years ago when it was Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, when a few people were screaming, saying, he can win, he can win. Well, it's the same thing. The Democratic Party keeps doing the same thing and expecting different results. And at this point, it is a definition of insanity.
Go ahead. Jump in, Lionel. We're almost going to the break. Go ahead.
Two things. What you just heard is the most frightening thing to the left-right paradigm. I'll bet you we could sit down and agree and forge on more things that we agree with, thus destroying this left-right continuum. But more importantly, imagine this. Judge Lavel, you are being asked right now to overturn an election. Judge Lavel, I want to show you this figure. This is the rioting. This is how much money was lost. These are the people, police, individuals who were hurt and killed and maimed. Do you want to sign your name to an order that would reverse the supposed candidacy or the win of Joe Biden? Do you want your name forever to be associated with this mayhem? Because let me tell you something.
Hold that thought. We're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on the election results. Stay with us. Welcome back to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavel. To remind you, we're discussing the election fiasco. Okay, Lionel, let's go back to you. You were elaborating on a point before we went to the break. Go ahead.
We saw what appeared, we call it here BLM and Antifa. I don't really know if it's BLM, but I promise you, any judge who were to reverse, were to hand the presidency to Donald Trump, you would see internecine rioting the likes of it. Let me just tell you one quick story. On 11th Avenue here in New York, where all the big car dealerships are, Bentley and Lamborghini and this and that. Yesterday, we noticed all of the cars were gone from the showroom just overnight. It was the weirdest. It's like they know they received this. We believe that we live in this world of law and order, and we have seen something that is so frightening. So in addition to the aforementioned reasons I gave, no judge is going to sign his or her name to anything that would be directly responsible for initiating and lighting the fuse to this powder keg.
Yeah, George, I mean, I want to go back to not my president theme, because I think that's the territory that we're moving into here. Considering the left, attacked Trump and anyone that supported him for not agreeing to the electoral outcome here. Well, as we speak right now, it seems that's being forced here. Why should anyone that voted Republican or for Donald Trump say to Joe Biden, "You're my president"? Give me one good reason.
No, there isn't any reason. Biden didn't even really go through the rigors of a primary contest in the way other presidential candidates do. He did terribly in the primaries and lost New Hampshire, Iowa, and Nevada. And then suddenly Obama intervened, told the Democratic Party, right, everybody behind Biden. And dutifully, they all voted for Biden. And lo and behold, within 24 hours, Biden is the nominee of the party. So, this is somebody, and then he added to that the nonsense of selecting as his running mate a person so unpopular within her own party that she had to drop out before the first primary. So this is the ticket that Americans are now supposed to accept as the legitimate rulers. 4 years of Trump. And, people still remember what Obama tried to do right at the beginning of the Trump administration, not just with the spying, but with essentially attempt to destroy it by bringing up the Logan Act and so on. So, yes, of course, the people who regard Trump as their leader will not accept it. And what's more, Trump himself will not accept it. Trump is the de facto leader of the Republican Party. If the presidency is taken away from him by essentially electoral theft, he will be the leader of the opposition. He will be holding rallies all over the country saying, "I am the real president." And then you have to wonder, what will the Biden administration try to do? Will they try to arrest him? Will they try to bring legal cases against him for sedition? So it could be very explosive.
Fiorella, it's very interesting what George just said, because you have Biden and Harris. They were selected by the political elite, the Democratic Party, the DNC, and they're the slate of names that we have to genuflect to, okay? Because Donald Trump, if you go back to 2016, he knocked off every single Republican contender, the best of the brightest of the Republican Party. He won. He won his primary, and a lot of people forget that he had his own Republican primary in this cycle here. He got more support than Ronald Reagan did. No other Republican has done as well as an incumbent in a primary here. So, I mean, George brings up a very interesting point. And I look at these people behind these shenanigans, and they never get anything right. They always screw things up. And I think they'll screw this one up too. Why? Because what George just said. Because Trump he may be removed from power, but he's still going to be a very powerful person. And in an interesting way, maybe even more powerful, because he probably won't be surrounding himself with a lot of the idiots that he has over the last 4 years. Your thoughts, dear. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're just going to see the effects of the Donald Trump presidency resonated in the, in his supporters who, to a lot of people on the left, they have completely dismissed them. And I understand the racial elements and I understand all these things that have been happening. However, there was not a lot of substance when the left went after Donald Trump. They didn't go after him on the things they should have gone after him. His foreign policy, they could have gone after him. Instead, they went on this Russiagate narrative, on impeachment. All this does, all this injustices, all this does when you're, pinning this election against him, when you're pushing him out, all this does is enforce his base. It grows his base. It polarizes this country more, and his base is basically just going to run with it. And I believe we're going to see another type of Donald Trump that's more effective in 4 years. If Joe Biden takes this presidency, it's going to be a lot more difficult for a lot of people to come to terms with this, but we're going to see the right be empowered by this because they were wronged. And like I said, a lot of people are not going to admit that. They're going to think that, just because they hate Donald Trump so much, they okayed the censorship of the mass surveillance state. They okayed what's going on here with the election. So they're completely in denial. And, you know, you can vilify him all you want. And, you know, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump myself, but the reality is this isn't about Donald Trump or Joe Biden. This is about the truth. And we have to have a commitment to the truth. And I don't see a commitment to veracity in the mainstream media. I don't see any semblance of that in our current government. So I honestly think we're going to see more uprisings and civil unrest, and the status quo politicians try to take advantage of that to pursue their own political narratives.
Yeah, Lionel, this is not going to be like, okay, well, that was just there was a tussle about a vote count, but it's all resolved right now. And that's not how people are going to react to this here. And as we go over the next few months, if indeed Joe Biden is called the winner here, the country's going to pull further and further apart, because I don't think people are going to say, well, let's let bygones be bygones. I don't see that happening. Lionel, your thoughts?
Have you ever heard of the phrase an antibiotic-resistant form of tuberculosis, where you have been hitting it with antibiotics for so long that this new strain is far more virulent or problematic? You're going to see a new American voter that does not fall under any category of left and right, as I said before, you're going to see almost something, dare I say, a more militant, dare I say, meta-fascistic. Let me also say something quickly, which I have to. The 800-pound gorilla. We have a president, a nominee, who by all stretch of the imagination has something very seriously wrong with him. A friend of mine asked this question: would you let Joe Biden drive you home from the airport? And I thought, and we laugh about it, and I don't want to mock, because I think that was a mistake to make.
We want to be sensitive to it, but we get your point.
But number two, the most important part too, is that we just had Hunter Biden and his father, a trove of documents turned over, not dealing with these sexual indiscretions of Hunter, but what appears to be evidence of systemic corruption between the president to be perhaps, and China, Ukraine, blah, blah, and absolutely nothing. The mainstream media put a firewall between the truth and what? So not only are we going to get a new version of whatever this left or right iteration is, you're going to see a new form of information pipelines and people who say, we're going to go around, whatever your mainstream media were before, wait till you see what you see now. And even Jack Dorsey, the Fred Ziffel doppelganger, cannot stop this. They have awakened, my friends, a sleeping giant, to paraphrase a very famous reference.
George, if the Senate remains in Republican hands, Biden will rule by executive order, okay? But some of the things that he may order, again, I'm thinking about First Amendment, I'm thinking about Second Amendment, an executive order on immigration, because, irrespective of what a lot of people talk about politics and they don't know what they're talking about. The president has wide leeway when it comes to immigration. All that stuff that they were going at the beginning of his administration is basically nonsense. It was a lot of noise. Biden could let a lot of people in, okay, and that will have not been democratically adjudicated. I'm looking at sources of potential big problems.
Yes, no, that is very much the case. You have to think about the Democratic Party today. It really doesn't represent anything. I mean, it doesn't really have any kind of an agenda. It's not particularly on the left, not on the right. It's really just a power-grabbing machine. And so therefore, what will the Biden-Harris agenda be, other than to enhance democratic rule forever and ever? And therefore, it will be about achieving a demographic change in the United States. First of all, the borders will be open so that everybody can just come in. And they will try to move for an amnesty for everyone here living illegally. So you're now talking about 20, 30, 40 million, no one really knows the exact number, of people who will be added onto the electoral roll. So that's a huge democratic voting bloc that will suddenly emerge. And so therefore the Democrats will have achieved what they want to achieve, which is that they will be in power for the next few decades. And I think that's really going to be the Biden agenda. The other thing, as you said about the Second Amendment, this is a very big deal with today's Democratic Party. They want to screw over the Trump voters, the people who hate them. And how do you do that? What's the most effective way of doing it? Go after their guns. And I'm quite sure, again, via an executive action, they will make some kind of a move to confiscate people's guns. Extremely
really interesting. I want to address this to all of you. We're almost out of time here. But one of the things, I think it really started in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, but it went all the way through to this election cycle here, is the demonization of the voter. Now, you usually do it to your opponent, right? But no, they demonize the voter. There's something wrong with the voter. And it's just this professional managerial class mentality. And I said they're a group because that same group never wants to talk about what really is most important in American politics. And that is class. It's something that the Republicans are beginning to wake up to once they get rid of these stupid libertarians. And the Democrats have lost it completely. Okay, Lionel, we'll talk about libertarians another time. Okay, we've all run out of time here. I want to thank my guests here, and I want to thank our viewers for watching us here, RT. See you next time. Remember, cross that rules.